welcome to the New Voices in Film, Adobe and Sundance Fellowship Spotlight. I'm Chris O'Fall. I'm the executive editor of Craft and Special Projects at IndieWire. So let me give you a little background of why we're here today. Adobe has been a longtime sponsor of both the Sundance Ignite and Women to Watch fellowships. These are dedicated platforms to fostering the talent of diverse filmmakers. And to date, they've sponsored over 140 filmmakers by giving them the type of resources and nurturing that's needed to develop talent. One thing that we see at IndieWire all the time is a business. Hollywood as a business is very bad at working on the next generation. Most businesses develop talent, and in this space, the nonprofits and these type of platforms have become incredibly invaluable in terms of doing that. And today, Adobe's really proud because 4 alumni from that program have projects here at Sundance 2024. And today, I'm going to be moderating a discussion with them, and we're going to be talking about their journey as filmmakers and to Sundance. So please join me in welcoming to the stage, first off, Ileana Sosa. Sean Wong. Geraldo Coelho. And Gabriela Ortega. So let's start off learning a little bit about our projects. And Leanna, we'll start off with you. God Save Texas is going to be a series on HBO, a nonfiction series. And it's a very interesting project I'd love for you to tell us about, but also your specific episode and the way the series works, and also how you got involved in this.
Well, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. A real honor. God Save Texas is a trilogy, and it'll be on HBO on February 27th. And it's based on Lawrence Wright's book called God Save Texas. And as we know, Texas sets the stage for a lot of what happens in the country. And so my particular episode deals with La Frontera, the border, El Paso. I was born and raised in El Paso, and we talk about, there's a lot of complexity to the border, and when people think about the border, they think about the violence. And in this episode, we do talk about that, but we also talk about how these two cities, these twin cities of El Paso and Juarez, are very interconnected and part of the everyday fabric of people's lives there. And so growing up there, we also talk about this term Nepantla that many of you might not be familiar with, which means in between. What is it like for people from the border, but also people of color, to live in in-between spaces? And I can say that growing up there, this sort of in-betweenness is something that you experience from, very young. And so we explore issues about that, and also about what happened in 2019 with the Walmart shooting, so which devastated, my community. Yeah, and I hope it's, that people find that this does a different take about on the border.
One thing I love about this series is each of the filmmakers, at least in the first 3, it's about their hometown. The first one, Richard Linklater, who's also executive produced it, does something about the prisons and where he lives in Austin. You're from El Paso. How did I think it's really great because the stories are told from the point of view of people that these are their hometown. I'm wondering how you got involved in this, and because Richard Wright's book, Lawrence Wright's book, not Richard Wright's, Sweet Jesus, lays out a structure for these things, but these stories are individual. So how did this story and you get involved in the series?
Yeah, so I was just finishing my first feature doc, What We Leave Behind, and I got an email saying that they were looking for a director for this episode. And it's interesting because I didn't, expect this. It was sort of a random, email that I got, and then I pitched my version of what I would talk about my hometown, right? And that's how that happened. I think they were looking specifically for a director from El Paso. And sadly, there's actually not very many documentary filmmakers from El Paso. There's only a handful. And so I thought that was really special because they wanted to hone in on, from someone telling their story from there. So being born and raised there, it was important to me to do it justice, and also, really be careful with this because, yeah.
My mother-in-law is from El Paso, and she consistently says, no one gets this town right. You have to have lived there. So I was telling her about this last night. She was very excited about it. Sean, Dee Dee is in U.S. competition. It's getting rave reviews, including from IndieWire. Not that I wrote the review. But I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the film and the journey, which it was based on a short, right, that you made first?
Kind of. Hello? Okay. Thank you, Maya, for that woo. Yeah, well, so it was a journey to here?
Yeah. Also, just a little bit of the film.
The movie, it's called Didi. Didi means little brother in Mandarin, but it's also a very endearing term that a lot of Chinese parents call their younger sons. It's what my mom used to call me. It's what she still calls me today. And it's a movie about a 13-year-old Taiwanese American boy, loosely based on my own upbringing, but very much inspired by the coming-of-age classics that I loved, like Stand By Me, Ratcatcher, 8th Grade, This Is England, The Sandlot, Water Lilies, and really the seed of the idea was, what if you took a movie like Stand By Me, but had it star people who looked and talked and felt like the kids that I grew up with, and making it hyper-specific to that experience, both in the characters, the setting. Our movie is set in the late 2000s, and just using all the sort of personal, vivid details to then tell a story ultimately that I think our movie is about shame and love and the ways in which shame can manifest itself in a young Asian American boy's life, personally, culturally, and societally. Societal? Is that a word? I don't know. But it's really funny. And it was kind of based on a short. I had been working on this movie for I started writing it in 2017, or the ideas kind of started percolating. And then in 2021, I had made a short film that started as research for this movie, which was called Hags, and I basically opened my old middle school yearbooks to kind of get a better sense of the time period, or how people dressed. A yearbook in middle school is just chaos. It's like an 8th grader designed it for 8th graders, and they're trying to be deep, and it's like, oh, life is moving so quickly. I'm like, you're 13. But I think flipping through that yearbook, I ended up just calling some of my middle school friends, and the themes that kind of revealed itself through that film kind of tied into DD. And so that film kind of looks back at the year 2008 and looks back at our adolescence and explores themes of identity through first generation Asian American children of immigrants. And I think we explore similar themes through similar characters in the feature. So they feel like cousins, but they're not really, it's not like a proof of concept. Yeah.
Great film, everybody check it out. I always think
Thank
that the best films often at Sundance, and the most rewarding thing is to go to the short film programs. Aldo, I wonder if you could tell us about your short film and kind of the origin of that.
For sure.
I should say it's translated to be the business trip. I apologize.
Yeah, Viaje de Negocios, which translates to business trip. It's a short film that basically comes from conversations that I had with my creative collaborator, Almandine Thomas, about the differences in upbringing in Mexico and the United States. In Mexico, I was telling her how my upbringing was very Americanized, and there's this thing in Mexico, malinchismo, where we love everything that comes from outside of Mexico. Anything that is not Mexican is like regarded highly. So I was just telling her about these trends with clothing, with music, with candy even, like all the Americans' trends that came to the United States and maybe disappeared here, they just arrived late in Mexico and they stayed. So one of the things we talked about were light-up sneakers in the early 2000s, and like how crazy that was to bring those to school, and like when parents went on business trips to San Antonio and like McAllen, like I thought those places were magical when I was a kid. I was like, that must be like the best place in the world because everyone's going every weekend. But it was just, it was a time of the early 2000s where, most American brands and products weren't available in Mexico. So those were the cheapest flights to go do shopping. So that's kind of like the genesis inspiration of the idea. It's from that and like based on a bunch of anecdotes of growing up in this bicultural school in Mexico City. And from, you know, kind of an amalgamation of my memories, anecdotes, like bits and pieces of people that I knew and like portraying like things about my life. That's how the film came together.
Gabriella, I want to clarify a couple things here with you. One, when Adobe made you a fellow, it was as a writer-director, and you did have a film here at Sundance 2 years ago. But you are someone that wears a lot of different hats, and you are here at Sundance 2024 with a film, Border Hopper, that you produced and acted in. I wonder if you could talk about that project and how you got involved in it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, it's the name of the hustle. You have to do so many things. I came to the U.S. with the aspirations of being an actress, and in that process realized how little people knew about my country, the Dominican Republic. I was in LA. I know if anyone's from New York, I know like there's strong representation there. But I think for me, I was like, I have so many things I want to say about my country. I think it's so funny what you're saying. In my country, we say Complejo de Huacanagarix. Huacanagarix was an indigenous leader in Dominican Republic that sold us out. And so every time someone's bringing in, same, it's like our Malinche.
Is the same, yeah.
I know. They're like, it's our villain origin story. But anyway, I'm in this film as a actor and producer, and I'm playing a director, which I think is so funny. But my dear friend Nico Casavecchia, which is an incredible director, Argentinian, and we both share this sort of immigrant experience. He shared with me a time where he had a huge opportunity as a commercial director, and he was in the middle of his limbo of the green card application, and him and his wife hustled like an incredible amount to get those papers and didn't tell the production company. They were like trying to get everything sorted to get this opportunity. And so the film is kind of a look at that American dream and this sort of like chip on our shoulder that we have as immigrants. But as you know, I tell a lot of my friends, like, I like doing all these things because I'm more project based. You know, if I see something and I want to be a part of it and I can give something of myself to it, I'll do it. And so as an actor and you know, in helping in the production team, because it was like a labor of love from friends, I was like so interested in not just the part of like, how do you get to the country? And like, you know, people think about like legal migration, but it's so hard to get your papers anyway. And like, I have so many friends with O1 visas getting rejected, people that are brilliant. You have to literally prove that you're an illegal alien. And you have to prove that you're an astounding alien or something. Like, it's ridiculous, like the standards. You get it?
Alien with extraordinary ability.
I was like, what is it? It's like literally, you have to be like out of this world, literally. And so to me, it was just very important to tell a story about migration and prove to people that it doesn't get any easier, even if you're doing it the right way.
There's something about, I love Sundance, but there's one thing about a myth of Sundance, and I used to teach film school, and I used to see it in all of my students. There's a dream of young filmmakers. I'm going to make a short. I'm going to be one of the 14,000 people that submit to Sundance, and I'm going to get discovered there. I'm going to get into Sundance, and that's going to happen. And it does happen, but very rarely. And often, and getting into Sundance is a big deal. Like, but in looking at all of your bios, it just reminds me of there are so many steps to this, fellowships, different festivals, development. I'm wondering if you all could talk about your journey to having your first film. I know for you it was 2 years ago at Sundance, and a little bit about those steps to get there. Because I think it's really important that young filmmakers understand this. It's like chances of a Sundance programmer seeing your film in the old Without a Box, whatever, in the Film Freeway now, and being, here we go. And then you're going to be discovered on some snowy night in January is not is not really the case, right? John, why don't you start also?
Yeah, you know, I think what you said about this idea of, you know, you're a young filmmaker, you kickstart your first short film, you make it, and you think you're going to go to Sundance. The short wins Sundance. You turn that into a feature. You're the next, you know, 21-year-old hot blah blah blah. Like, it just doesn't happen. Everyone thinks that's going to be them, and it just doesn't happen. And I tried that route too. I kickstarted a short film. I went to community college and then did, with the intention of hoping to transfer to film school. And at community college, I didn't know a ton of filmmakers, and I was just very, very scrappy DIY, trying to figure out how to make filmmakers, wanting to do this. I ended up transferring to like a very traditional film school, and then all of a sudden, everybody was a filmmaker, and everybody was, oh, the Sundance, and I was like, oh, Annapurna, and all of a sudden, it was like, oh, there's all these things that I think I need to want now that had nothing to do with actually making stuff. And yeah, it was, my senior year, I kickstarted a short, we shot it. It was still very small, but it was like, oh, we shot on an Alexa, it's gonna get into Sundance. And it didn't, we spent 2.5 years cutting it, and then it just, didn't really do much. It was a learning experience for sure, but you have this flawed idea that, because you shoot on an Alexa, it's like a real movie, and it just doesn't happen. You just can't bank on that happening. And then the thing that actually was like my first thing that opened any door for me was something that was like no institution would ever, like, you would never make it in an institution. It was, after I graduated college, I ended up getting a job in New York City. It was a 1-year residency, and I thought I was only gonna live in New York for a year, so I ended up moving to New York City, didn't know anybody there, started this new life after, meeting all these filmmakers who I now make stuff with, forever. And it was this 5-minute montage, basically, of me living in New York City, chronicled by voicemails left by my mom, and it was just footage that I shot over the course of a year on like my DSLR and my phone, made for like $0. That short film, made it, finished it. 12 hours later, put it on the internet, and like that short film opened way more doors for me than any. Like that was, to this day, like the first crack that opened, and like people were emailing me. I was like screening it at places, and I was like, whoa. But I think it just goes to show that like something small and personal and honest, and that was the first thing I made. I was like, oh, I think this is what my voice is. I didn't really know what it was, but I trace everything sort of back to that short film as kind of being the first pebble that kind of did anything.
Anybody else?
Oh, you said me. Oh, hi. I was listening to you. I was thinking of two things that I think are separate but working in tandem. One is your craft, right? Like there's that artistry that you can't make films to get into Sundance, because you have to make films that you care about, and then people are gonna care about them. So for me, I have been working in the arts since I was 13 years old. I had a camcorder and we only have one tape for the VHS, and it was the only thing I had. And when every Sunday I would record the Sunday news with my cousins at my grandma's house, and it would be like, the woodpecker made a hole in the wall. Where is the woodpecker? We're gonna get him to jail. And I kept filming over the same tape, so I have no recollection. I have no physical evidence of this, but it was the joy of doing. And I think every time I do something, I try to go back to like 13-year-old Gabriela that was doing stuff because she just wanted to be loud and do stuff and connect with people. So for me, as an actor, as a playwright, I just started, on Instagram, Dr. Ortega. And it's literally all stuff of teeth. He's like really cool. People love my dad. Anyway, the point is that we would go on these road trips together, and I just pulled out my phone one day and I just started filming. And I literally was sitting on like a year-long worth of footage that then when I just couldn't see past Gabriela the actor, I hit up my friend in Mexico City and I was like, I had all these things. Do you want to edit this with me? And that was my first film. And I had $300. I paid a homie from USC to clean up the sound. No, nothing. And I put like some, film people are gonna hate me, but I put like some like film filters, like Super 8. It looks cool. And then I started submitting it to Latino festivals because that's like my community and my demographic. And I wanted to be, if I want to be known somewhere, I wanted to be in my community. And I got into a couple festivals, and like a few months after, I get a call from HBO. And I was like, huh? And they're like, we want to acquire your short film. And I was like, okay? And I literally thought they were catfishing me. I was like, my mom's a lawyer, so I was like, you have to send me the paperwork. I need to see this in writing. And they're like, we don't do the contracts you would do them over the phone. And I was like, okay, yes, but still you have to email me. And that's how it started. And that, like, seeing that something so small had like a big impact on somebody else pushed me to make more films with my friends, have a portfolio, and then submit to things. I submit to every single fellowship ever. And then just continuously, and then so this is like the craft part. And then the industry part, I feel like just follow up. Like, I would just email people, be like, hey, what are you doing? No, not in a sense of like, what can I get out of you? But just to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm really interested in these things. I submitted to Sundance. I submitted to this. And then I think you try hard enough and people are like, okay, she's not going to stop until we watch the movie. And, you know, that's how it happened.
Big steps for either two of you in terms of those moments? Because again, you look at your resumes before having a film at Sundance, really had to establish yourself and be recognized, even just to get the fellowships that you guys got and stuff.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I think it's important to mention it's a long journey and there's plenty of hardship and plenty of heartbreak along the way. And you just have to get used to it and you have to move past it. I was blessed with a fellowship, an Ignite fellowship in 2018, which was truly an amazing experience that gave me not only obviously access to the festival and industry at the festival, but more importantly, the community of the fellows that you meet there. And you see the shorts they're doing, you see the projects they're working on, and it's a very, very beautiful community, the one that they foster at the Ignite Fellowship. So that was huge for me, and after that, for economic reasons, I had to start taking jobs, and I worked mostly as an assistant director for many years. I was the first AD on several films. I was the first AD on Shiva Baby. I was one of the ADs on Bardo. I was, I was an AD. I was the first AD on Reality, which is on HBO Max. So there are plenty of features, different things, and that. It might have felt for a time like I'm being rerouted and I'm changing my direction. I'm not a director anymore, but it only just helped in sharpening my craft and my understanding. From being an assistant director all those years, I got so much confidence in working on set and so much ability to think on my feet and be like, okay, how do we solve issues and what to do, what not to do, and what kind of filmmaker, what kind of director do I want to be when I'm the team leader? So that was, many years for me. And meanwhile, writing different things, and a lot of figuring out internal crisis. What is my voice? What should I be telling? When in reality, I don't know for all of you, but I think it's just a gut feeling. It's not oh, my voice is this, so this is what I should be writing about. It's oh, I have a strong feeling about this story and or these ideas, and I'm just gonna explore them.
You're nodding your head.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's interesting. I didn't think I could be a filmmaker. I'm, first gen and my, really working class. And I didn't think that was an option for me. I started in fiction. I went to UCLA and got my MFA there in directing, and then pivoted into documentary. And my first feature documentary, What We Leave Behind, world premiered at South by in 2022. And now it's on Netflix. And, it's a personal documentary about my grandfather who was a bracero. And, I never thought that through personal storytelling, it would lead me to be right here, right now, telling another very personal story about my hometown. That project took 7 years. And, very similar to everyone on the panel, I didn't have money when I first started. I didn't really even know what I was doing. Borrowed a camera, went to Durango, to Mexico with my mother. She was my producer at the time. And that's how it started, that process. And I actually had a full-length rough cut, a different iteration of that film that I completely scrapped got a new editor and started again, from scratch. So yeah, I think that
Lots of different paths where you could
yeah,
have hopped
different
off.
paths.
Well,
in
you
that-
could have hopped
it-
off
Yeah,
that.
in that one film, and then the pandemic happened, and I wasn't sure if we were going to even be able to screen this film in person. After 7 years, that was my only hope, was just to be able to have, a premiere in person. And then we got the call from South by and it was the first time that the world, especially the industry, came back in person. And we were really floored by that response. It won 2 awards there. They added a 4th screening. And even though this story is very specific to my community, to my family, it's really resonated with people. And the specificity, I think, is what resonates with people. It's universal, even though it's about a Mexican family living in Durango, separated by this border. So I don't know. I think it's a process. It's a long one, and there's a lot of heartache and rejection, and I've definitely have encountered that. But you keep going, and you keep just, I don't know. You find that truth, and you stick to it.
Let's talk about the new projects they got here. I wonder if each of you could describe a big obstacle that was in the way. And when I talk to filmmakers, there's always this moment where the thing starts becoming real, or this is actually going to happen. May it be creative, may it be a location, may it be money, may it be a cast member. I'm just wondering. I know there's lots of obstacles to the films that you had here, but I'm curious if you could pinpoint one and kind of that moment where things started feeling like they came together. Yeah, sure. You're the one that looked at me first.
I mean, yeah, I think I've been living with this film for about 7 years, but I had never raised financing before. I had never so much of that jump from short to feature is just, you think you know how to make something, and you do know the craft and the creative. I think you always feel pretty confident in the part that you know, but there's so much to jumping into feature, and you just don't know. Like when I started this, I didn't have an agent, never talked to managers, I didn't have a lawyer, just so many things about the business that you're just like, what is all this? How do I navigate this? That was really challenging. And then obviously financing. I think one thing that I really had to exercise my own self-conscious sort of muscle was, with short films, I had this very strong ethos of not putting the packaging before the product. I for all the shorts I've done, I'm I don't like posting about it. I don't like talking about it until it's done. And then you have this sort of element of surprise of hey, I have this new short, and people are like, well, you've been working. When were you working on this? And I was like, I've been doing it for 2 years. As opposed to we're about to make this short, and then everyone's so excited, and they're like, where was that short you talked about a year and a half ago? And I was like, oh, we're still editing it. And I think that's always worked for me, and I think it's always helped the short films. And that's kind of where I think I've thrived, let me just tinker away in my cave and then come out to the world with something. And then I think with the feature, to the credit of our producers, they were set a date, we're shooting that, tell everybody you're shooting, and go for it. And I was like, but we have no money. We're not shooting. We can't. They're like, no, set a date, build it, and they will come. And I was like, okay. And so we told everyone we're shooting summer of 2023, and we put out a casting notice, and it went super viral. And it was Sean Wong's debut film, shooting summer of 2023. And everyone's like, you got finance? I was like, no. And we're casting, and everyone's like, congrats. I was like, oh my God, I'm such a fraud. And, we just kind of went with it. And then I remember, I was like, public failure is just the worst, just fail publicly, I think, is maybe the lesson. And then, luckily we got some grants from Sundance and the Asian American Foundation that gave us a little bit of money to start casting or start, putting a budget together. And then I think that sort of get the ball rolling mentality did really help, because then we had no money raised, and then literally within a 36-hour span in March, we had 75% of our budget raised. And it was and we were about to go do a scout in the Bay Area, and I remember Carlos Lopez Estrada, who's one of our producers, who's also a very amazing director, I think the best thing about working with him as a producer is he works with these other producers and then gives me the best version of all his experiences. And he was like, we should go do a scout in Fremont. And I was like, why? I know all these locations. That's my hometown. He's like, no, I just did it for this other film, and it made it real. We should do it. And I was like, no, it's a waste of resources. And then I was just like, all right, fine, let's do it. I got to go home and hang out with my family for a little bit, too. And it was the, like, on the way up to that trip was when, like, that sort of first giant thing happened. And then we got there, and Carlos was like, you should treat this as a real scout. I think we're shooting in 4 months. And I was like, oh, shit.
I noticed some head nodding over there about when Sean was talking about shorts. I'm wondering what some of that process was of like putting those together, and that idea of are you a little bit on the down low putting it together and working with friends?
I'm bad at keeping secrets. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't because I wasn't directing it. I was the person, I was the Carlos. I was like, we're shooting. Because Nico is an incredible director, so I'm like a little ADHD, a little like, woo, I have so many projects, so many things all the time, yay. He's like, I'm doing this thing and I have to do it, it has to be perfect. And he's coming from the commercial world, he's very experienced, he's done a feature before, but he had this story like literally bursting out of him. Last Sundance, we were hanging out and he's like, I think this is the year I applied to this grant and this grant and this grant. And I'm like, do you think we can get gear for free? And he's like, yeah. Do you think we could shoot at your house? Yeah. You have me. Do you have another actor? We'll have this friend. Let's do it. Because nobody's gonna care like your friends and your community. And then the challenge for me then was, because then I was all talk, but I hadn't acted on film in over like 2 years. And I realized in that process, I was actually very healing creatively, because as a director, I created this sort of persona of like, I'm a filmmaker, you know, like I'm in control, calm, cool, collected, I'm behind the scenes. And then putting a camera on my face again, I realized I had been still some negative self-talk, like from years ago of like not being good enough, not looking a certain way, all this stuff. And so for me to surrender and help someone else's vision and have that process of being for a project and not just being for me, that was really awesome. And it was tough, but it was because we did it with friends that we were able to sort of all feel good about it.
You need those people, right, to get a short off the ground in a community, and people that will dedicate themselves to helping you.
Absolutely. I mean, this short, Viaje de Negocios, would not be possible without Amandine Thomas. Amandine Thomas, we came up with the idea of the short together in our conversations. And she was like, okay, now you're writing the script. And she kept just pushing me all the way and pushing the project. And she was like, no, I believe in this project. This is like as much like my baby as it is yours. And it's like, I know that it can be made. And, you know, I think the biggest obstacle we're all going to mention is economic. Getting a short off the ground is really hard, especially in the United States. It's really a shame that there's no public funding for short films, because it really excludes so many voices. So that's really a shame. And, you know, we were shooting in Mexico, which does have some public funding and does have some opportunities of sponsorships and things like that. And, you know, I had a relentless collaborator. Amandine was like, this movie is happening and we are shooting it. And I think, you know, I was like, it's a school, it's kids. And she was like, one step at a time, go to the school, meet up with them. And I went to the school, the same school that I went to when I was a kid, since I was 3 all the way until I was 18. And I met with the principal, and there were still some people there that I knew back in the day when I was there. And I was like, well, I want to make a film. I would love to shoot there. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, okay. So they were just open, and they were like, okay, the only problem is in July 2nd, we start construction, and the school looked exactly how I remembered it, exactly the way it was when I was there like 20 years ago. but it was about to change. So it's like that moment, it was, okay, this film is happening and it's shooting before July 2nd because it just needs to happen. And just things started falling into place. I had an incredible team that just made it possible, and it was a true labor of love from everyone involved.
One thing that seems so scary about nonfiction is, in some way, the script writing is also in post. And you have a vision, you have a sense of where you're going. But like, was there a moment with your we're not saying episode. What are we? Your section of
trilogy.
Your section of the trilogy of God Save Texas. You remember this is going to work. This is coming together.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a treatment. Yeah, and I had a treatment, and I knew that there were, certain people's or certain members of my community that I wanted to make sure that they made it into this episode. People who were born and raised there, from the community, activists, journalists, and just people that I know, that I really admire. And so actually the episode is pretty true to the treatment. I mean, there were things that didn't make it. I didn't expect for my family to be in it, and also each director, I should mention, is also in it and on camera. So this was very different for me. I'm usually used to being behind the camera, and this time around, I was in front of it. And so that I didn't really know how that was gonna work. And then directing and also being on camera was a different thing for me, right? I think once we had a rough cut and we saw it, and I thought, okay, this is coming together. And then similar to What We Leave Behind, there's voiceover in this as well. And then I started writing that in post. And then it really did come together. But what I'm really proud is just the people that I wanted to make sure to profile are in it. Yeah.
We only got a few minutes left here, and a few of our panelists have some hard outs. So we just want to quickly go through this. One thing, in talking to a lot of Sundance filmmakers, there's that moment often in November that you find out that you got in, which is, wow, awesome. And then slowly but surely the reality sets in. This thing's going to screen in 2 months on the biggest platform I ever have. I'm wondering if you all could talk a little bit about these last, it's roughly like 2 months, right? And what's that been like?
Okay. So the short wasn't finished. We had, I don't want to spoil it, but there's mixed media, there's animation on it. And the animation wasn't final. And I was like, Nico, kudos to you. Like, it's not even finished and it got into Sundance. And he's like, yeah. And so we're like, we have to do ADR. And I ended up going back to my alma mater at USC. I did not go to the film school at USC. So it was like a nice hurrah for me to get space at the the booths there to record. And one of the producers got super mad at me because, of course, the minute I got into campus, I texted like 3 of my favorite professors, like, yo, you here? And I like ran to the theater school and like hugged everybody, and then came back. And it was cool. It was cool to see it, like, it becomes real when you see all the little pieces. And, what I was sort of also doing, because I had a screen at Sundance before, was like, we got to do press, we got to do these panels, we got to do all this stuff. So we started emailing everybody. And so me and the other producer were just like publicists suddenly. And then poor Nico was just like, we're almost there, you guys. We colored, we did the sound. They did the sound in Argentina. He literally flew 2 days before the festival to LA and then came here. Him and his wife, who also co-wrote it. It's just a world, but it makes it so worth it. I think when I'm seeing on the screen, I'm seeing a version that I don't think I've seen it, So it's gonna be exciting.
Even when you are picture locked, I think people always underestimate the amount of technical steps between just because you got the cut how you want it, what has to happen technically, right? To the point that you're screening it here this weekend, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do want to, by the time we found out in November, the film was finished. When we submitted, the film was completely finished. We actually did post-production in probably record time. Like Amandine, the editor, she cut the film in a week. So a week after we wrapped, we had a first cut, and maybe from there we cut like 40 seconds out, but that was it. We did color, we did sound, and by the time we submitted, the film was finished. it was somehow still a whirlwind. We're like, oh, we need a poster, we need all these things, but the film was done, which was great because we knew, you know, it was the way it was meant to be seen, and we didn't have to finish anything right against time.
Sean, you shot this summer. Was that the same case for you?
Complete opposite. Yeah, we shot in the summer. We got the SAG Indie waiver, so we shot all through August, and I think we were determined to at least try to make the Sundance deadline. And you know, I have a background as an editor as well, but I worked with this incredible editor, Ariel Zakowski. I've never worked with an editor before in my life, and so getting to collaborate with her was both so scary at first, but like then it just became the biggest joy. And so I jumped in the edit with her September 5th, and we just were like, we're gonna sprint and we're gonna try our best. And it was, yeah, insane sprint that month and a half or whatever. And you know, it's like 7-day weeks, just truly, truly insane. And we were like, if we don't get into Sundance, then pause, sleep. We got in, and it was like, you know, a day of just tears. Like, I was in New York City just walking around like, oh my God, I did it. And then we were like, oh shit. And so it was truly, truly a sprint. We finished the movie like a week ago. And I haven't slept in like 9 months, so.
Does this type of journey still apply to an HBO produced project?
You know, I feel very fortunate. It's a little different. With my first feature doc, it was like sort of this experience for this. You know, the Jigsaw team and HBO have been amazing. And so the beauty of this project is that I've finally been able just to direct, to just step in, not fundraise, not do any of that. And all of that is taken care of by that team, which I feel so blessed and lucky. And it's just been an amazing privilege.
Because you've been down this road.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we gotta finish here. Thank you all. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you to the panelists. Go see these films, these shorts. Yours screens individually. Like it doesn't. The trilogy does not screen. You go see your episode or Rick's episode or Alex's episode.
Yeah, Rick's episode is Tuesday, and then Alex's and mine is on Thursday, and then it'll air on HBO February 27th.
Sean, when's your next screen?
Today in Salt Lake City in 40 minutes.
How about here in Park City?
Park City. No, Salt Lake City.
No, but how about here in Park City?
Here in Park City. Val, when's our next screening in Park City? In Park City. 23rd? Yeah.
When's your program?
Shorts program 3. It's the first one, so arrive early, please. And we're screening on Wednesday in Park City again, so come see it.
Gabriela?
We premiere today in about half an hour. Short vlog 4. I think we're first 2. If anybody wants to come with me, let's go.
Gabriela has a heart out, clear. Don't congratulate her at the movie in an hour. Let her out the door.
Yes, thank you. Find me at the bars.